going to be talking about the 19th Amendment, which was when women got the right to vote. So on the left-hand side of my screen, I have the presentation that I'm going to be giving to you all. Obviously, this is a little bit different of a format. Whenever there's a video, I'll tell you to pause this video that was posted and go to the YouTube link provided in Google Classroom. You guys will be graded on the notes on the right-hand side of my screen. I'm going to show you guys how I want you to take the notes. So for a 3, all you have to do is follow along with me and complete the notes and answer the questions. To get a 4, however, you need to be able to answer these fill-in-the-blank notes and then do these questions in your own words. So we're going to be going over these questions as a class, or in this video, I guess you could say. And so to get a 3, all you have to do is follow along. But to get that 4, hopefully everybody will be shooting for a 4 and you'll be able to just do these in your own words and you'll be perfecto. So the 19th Amendment, women's right to vote. These are our learning targets. I can explain how the 19th Amendment affected Americans. I can analyze how voters and protesters impact their environment. I can investigate or find information on the internet from trustworthy sources. So remember, we're using our CRAP method: current, relevant, an author who's an expert, accurate, and a purpose of spreading knowledge. So you're going to look at trustworthy sources on the internet. And then you're going to write summaries on what you found. So you're just going to tell me what sources you were looking at, what information those sources gave you, all of that. So, but you guys are going to be graded on these notes for now. So this is when you'll pause the video and you can listen to the Dolly Parton song. Just as a caution, it has a little bit of Christian overtones going on. It mentions Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, the apple. So if that offends you, then that's fine. You don't have to watch it, but it's just kind of a cool music video. It introduces you to the 19th Amendment. We've come so far, I guess we should show them the first bite of the apple. We were defiant, I'll admit, but we knew we couldn't quit. So that was just like a 5-second preview, 2-second preview of what that was. So you're going to watch the video, pause now. Okay, so hopefully you were able to watch that. So what is the 19th Amendment? The 19th Amendment is the right of citizens of the United States to vote, shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So what does that mean? That means that the U.S. and any state in the U.S. cannot deny you the right to vote depending on what sex you are. So if you're a male, a female, they can't deny you the right to vote. Congress protects this article or protects our right by legislation, by lawmaking. So Congress makes the laws. They protect our rights with these laws. So it made it so that women could vote too. So what is the legislative branch? The legislative branch is another word for Congress. Congress has 2 parts. The first part is the Senate. The Senate has 100 senators. So 2 for every state. Maine has 2, California has 2, every state has 2. The second part of Congress is the House of Representatives. So the House of Representatives has 435 representatives. Each state has a different number of representatives depending on the population. So a place like Maine, they'll have, we only have 2 representatives because we're so small. A place like California or Florida, they do have a lot more representatives because they have a lot more people. So these 2 parts of Congress in the legislative branch, they make the laws and they amend the Constitution. So not only do they make the laws, but they make and amend the Constitution. So they change or add to the Constitution. You'll notice this amend, it's a lot like up here, the amendment. So Congress is what made the 19th Amendment possible. They amend the Constitution. So remember, the Constitution, that's what outlines our government and gives us our protections as citizens. So if you amend the Constitution, then you're talking about the rights of citizens and our government. So this is when you would pause and watch this Schoolhouse Rock video. So pause now. Alright, so hopefully you were able to watch that. So this is just kind of a basic overview of what that was. So how does a bill become a law? People have an idea. They say, hey, this should be a law. Maybe we should consider this as a society making this a rule. So people will ask their congressman and he'll write a bill. Then he'll present it to Congress and Congress will debate on whether that law should be or whether that bill should be a law. So first the House of Representatives vote. And then the Senate votes. So first it goes the House and then the Senate. If both the House and the Senate say, yeah, we think that this should be a law, then they hand it over to the president. The president then has to decide whether he thinks it should be a law. If he signs it, then yay, your bill becomes a law. If he does not, that's called a veto, and the bill will go back to Congress. So it'll go back to Congress, the House, they'll debate it, and then they'll vote on it. The Senate, they'll vote on it. But a lot of times, once it goes back to Congress, the chance of it becoming a law are very slim. So Congress, they also amend the Constitution. So again, the Constitution is the document that outlines our government and the processes within it. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next lesson. And also gives us our rights and protections as American citizens. So all amendments are part of the Constitution. The 19th Amendment, when women got the right to vote, that's a right under our Constitution. It's an amendment. The first 10 amendments, we call that the Bill of Rights. And that's really the part of the Constitution that gives us our basic fundamental rights and protections as citizens. So, the Bill of Rights, a part of the Constitution. All the other amendments are also a part of the Constitution. However, they are not in the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is only the first 10. Okay? All right. So now go ahead and watch the video about the suffragist. This suffragette is named Rebecca. She's from the year 1920. That was 100 years ago. Women like her helped women gain the right to vote. So you guys, as you watch this, go ahead and try to fill out these questions. And we will go over them as a class. But remember, to get a 4, you have to say these in your own words. So as you watch, try to fill them out by yourself. This is where you will pause and watch the suffragette video. Okay, so hopefully you were able to watch the suffragette video. So Rebecca said that suffragettes or suffragists, they're kind of the same thing. A suffragist is someone who believed women should get the right to vote. A suffragette, that's pretty much the same thing. They think women should get the right to vote, only usually they were women. So suffragette, that's a woman who believes that she should get the right to vote and that other women should. So Rebecca, she's a suffragette, she's a suffragist. She said that other suffragists had spent 70 years organizing, speaking, writing, petitioning, lobbying, and parading for women's rights. Using the context of the sentence, write the definition of one of the bolded words. So, the context of the sentence, that just kind of means what is this sentence really saying? So, they spent this many years doing these things. What does that mean? These are all a form of protest. Right? They spent 70 years protesting to get women's rights, to be able to vote. Organizing is as in events. For example, parading or picketing. So picketing, that's when you go around with signs. For example, the suffragettes would, while they were parading, they would also sometimes picket the White House. They'd stand outside a place and protest by holding up signs. So parading shows how many people believe in a cause and how many people think that. So parading shows how many people believe in a cause and how people can get together to show the government / lawmakers what their representatives have to say about an issue. So when you are parading, picketing, protesting, doing all of these things, you're showing the people in power that they're the people that they represent. You always think about government being by the people, for the people. Well, the government is for the people. They are chosen by us. We vote them in so that they represent us when they're making the laws. So when we parade or do any of these other forms of protest, we're showing people that, hey, the people that you represent, they feel a certain way. And you should listen to how we feel. Here, I'm just going to move this up a little. There we go. So, Rebecca seemed sad when she said that she didn't have anyone to vote for her interests anymore. Why? So this was a little bit ambiguous in the video, but she is sad because her husband fought in World War I and probably passed away. Remember, this is 1920. This is right after World War I ended. A lot of men fought in World War I and passed away. So women no longer had anybody to vote in their interests. Before, like Rebecca said, women kind of put it on men to represent their family, a lot like we as people put representatives in Congress to vote for our interests. However, when women found out that their men passed away during the war, they really felt like, hey, we don't have anybody to vote in our interests anymore. It's up to us now. So that is why. What's one reason why Rebecca thinks women should have the right to vote? So one of the things that Rebecca talked about was that women should be involved in matters that concern them. For example, she mentioned child labor laws and product manufacturing guidelines / laws. So women were really, they were worried about, again, having their interests protected. They wanted to know, hey, what is my life? I want to be able to control my life, right? I want to be able to say what laws I have to live by. So that's one reason why Rebecca thought that women should vote, that they should be involved in matters that concern them. If they're, for example, if Congress were to vote on a law that said that women can no longer work outside of their homes, that really matters to their lives, right? Can we go out? Can we work? If Congress were to make a law like that, that would really affect them. So she thought that you should be involved in that. You should be able to say, yes, I want that, or no, I don't want that. One of the things that she mentioned was child labor laws. A lot of women, they didn't want their children to be working in factories anymore. They wanted education to be widespread and available to even poor kids. Back then, not everybody got an education. Again, with product manufacturing guidelines, matters that involved them. They were worried about bringing things into their home. What products were being made in these factories in the 1920s? They weren't sure because there were no manufacturing guidelines. They didn't have the labels that we find on food and drinks and everything that we buy now. They didn't have those. So that was one reason why Rebecca thought that women should vote. The Silent Sentinels protested and were arrested while protesting. While in prison, they were treated very badly. So remember, they were force-fed. That was very painful and humiliating for those women. They weren't even really supposed to be there to begin with. While in prison, they were treated very badly. But they did it because they felt that it was right and it was the moral thing to do. If you lived during the suffrage movement, would you have protested even though there could be negative consequences? So this is completely up to you. Would you have? Yes, I think I would have. Because it is the right thing to do. And I want to protect my freedoms, right? That's really important. We have to protect our freedoms. If we want to keep our freedoms, then we really have to be able to vote and stand up for ourselves in some way as a citizen. So, answer the two-part question. What's an argument against giving women the right to vote? So one argument was that women belong in the home. They should stay in the kitchen. So that's what people would actually say to these women. You should stay in the kitchen. You shouldn't even be out here without a man. So Rebecca, she was like, she stuck up for herself, right? She said, women do belong in the home and in all other spheres of life. Even women should vote on things that concern them. Again, going back to this question. Women should be able to vote on the things that concern them, including matters of the home. So again, Rebecca, she said that women should be able to have a say in their lives. What is power of the press? So you guys will have a text box here. Guys, we'll have a text box here. However, what is power of the press? Power of the press is when you use media, for example, newspapers, you could do TV news, obviously. Go to magazines or any other source that gives information. So, power of the press can also be a part of a verbal conversation, not necessarily just in text, but that's usually what we mean when we say power of the press. We mean newspapers, magazines, things that are in print. So when you use media to get your message out and convince others of your point. So it's basically when you say, hey, this is what's happening. If you guys don't know, here it is. And really kind of telling people, but also telling the press that, hey, something should be done about this. All right. Rebecca said that suffragists use the following strategies to gain the right to vote: publicity in the press, peaceful protests, petitions, pageants, processions, and parades, proving women's value and worthiness by contributing to their communities, and having an effect on the people of power's lives. So, being able to impact people in Congress or other people in power, can you kind of affect their lives and convince them of your point? Choose one or more of these strategies and explain how suffragists use this to gain the right to vote. So let's use parades. Nope, let's use petitions. I'll tell you guys what a petition is. A petition is a document that people sign for a certain issue. Once the petitioners, people that petition, so once they get a certain amount of signatures, they present the document, the petition, to Congress / their representative. So remember that these representatives we vote them in. We vote them into Congress. So they really want to listen to the people that they are representing, because they won't have a job if we don't vote them in again. They really want to make sure that they get reelected. So listening to the people is really their job. Listening to the people is the job of Congress people. Okay? So I just want to go over a few more points with you guys. Protest and punishment. So Rebecca said that there were many ways to protest, right? So organizing, speaking, writing, petitioning, lobbying, parading, striking, all of these things are used to protest. So just very quickly, organizing. You might organize an event like this parade/picket line. Speaking, you'll talk about things. You'll debate with people. You'll say, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's try to convince them of our point. The same thing with writing. You would write to someone and try to convince them of your point. Kind of debate what is going on and why you're right. Petitioning, we talked about that down here. Lobbying, that's when you kind of talk with people in power. You might give them money and you try to convince them of your point. Parading, that's when you have a big parade or a procession and you go around and you say, hey, look at all of us. We think that this is right. We think that this issue should be looked at in Congress. And the Congress people say, hey, you know what? That's right. Another thing about parading is that it disrupts people's lives. And it kind of shows everyday people that, hey, these people have an issue that they want to be being talked about. They will kind of disrupt other people's lives in order to get their point across. The same thing with striking. So striking is when you stop doing something, usually when workers stop working in exchange for getting money. So when somebody stops doing something in exchange for something else, workers will stop working to get more money. The same thing kind of happens with women's rights. Women would go on strike. They'd have these children laborers go on strike. And that would affect the people in power. That would affect people who have money and congressmen. And it's just another way to protest. You can't run you cannot run a corporation without workers. So those are just a few ways to protest. Suffragists that were arrested while protesting were often treated very poorly in prison. They tried using these hunger strikes because they couldn't use a lot of these forms of protest. And that led to force feeding, which was a very painful and humiliating experience where they basically forced you to eat. So why have a hunger strike? Why would these women, after protesting and being arrested, why would they want to strike? Well, they began to strike because they thought that they could get out of jail. So if we don't eat, if we starve ourselves, then they'll have to let us out. We were wrongly arrested to begin with, and so the suffragettes, their rights as U.S. citizens were already being violated. So you can't just arrest someone and put them in prison for nothing. So that's kind of what happened to these women. They knew that the jailers and the people in power that arrested them, they would get in trouble if anything happened to them while they were in prison, and they might get in trouble anyway, because like I said, you can't just arrest somebody and put them in prison. Plus, it would look really bad if they died on their watch. Again, they weren't supposed to be there to begin with. So either the people in power will have to let them out, or they won't be popular with the people anymore. That's another thing. Remember that our representatives, we elect them into office. We give them their job every 4 years or ever how many years. So they really care about what we think, or at least they should care about what we think. So they want to be popular amongst the people. However, when you hear about women striking, you hear about women starving themselves in prison because they weren't even supposed to be in prison to begin with. All they were doing was protesting for their rights, and they were thrown in prison. Not only that, but when they did hunger strike, people in power came up with a solution that if you don't eat, then we'll make you eat. You're not going to die on our watch and make us look bad. We'll just make you look bad. It was a painful and humiliating experience being force-fed. So these women, once they got out of jail, and even before that, they would send writings to people. They wouldn't let their voices be quieted. They told their stories to others. Once people heard these women were treated so horribly, it actually ended up helping their cause. So they saw that people in power were force-feeding them. And that made the people that they represent very upset. So really, it ended up helping the suffragettes' cause and not the congressmen who are against the 19th Amendment. More people wanted women to get the right to vote. So just a quick note. What effect did the 19th Amendment have on women in the past and present? So it is to be noted that only white women could vote. The 19th Amendment, that only made it so that white people could vote. It took until 1965 with the Civil Rights Act that made it so everyone could vote. So black women, they couldn't vote until 1965. Isn't that crazy? 1920 to 1965. So that's definitely, again, something to note. That's something that really shows kind of where our country was at that time. We weren't giving rights out to just anybody, but women really had to fight just for their right to vote for decades. Then black people had to fight for decades in order to get their right to vote. So it sort of builds on each other. These movements and protests, they sort of build momentum off of the past movement. So now everyone can vote in national, state, and local elections. It is very important to vote. Again, these people that we vote into Congress, they represent us. These issues that come up that Congress talks about, they directly and indirectly affect our lives. So it's very important that we vote. So show up and vote. Okay, so that will conclude this video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you look at Google Classroom for all of the different videos and your 2 big assignments that you'll be doing. I also will include an article or 2, so make sure that you look on Google Classroom for all of the other materials. Thank you. Have a good day.